Hey everyone, this is Tommy from Tech Fun Blog of North America,
Hey, this is Chase with the Tech Fun blog in North America.
and today we're going to do a little different video for you. We're taking some user comments, user suggestions, and we got one right here. This is what we're going to talk about.
This is from Jacob Johnson, and it says, "Hey guys, was wondering what your thoughts are about the recent influx of hardware being dedicated to virtual reality and how it could affect the future of gaming and technology in general. Thanks and love the channel, Jake." Well, thanks, Jake, for the comment. Thanks for the request. We appreciate you liking the channel and whatnot.
So virtual reality has been kind of a hot topic in the tech world lately. Everyone's talking about it, so we might as well take a crack at it too.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say I've had the best experience with VR technology. I mean, I've played the Kinect a little bit. I mean, we all know the PlayStation and iToy. I was on the PlayStation 2. And I think that kind of gets us into our first little point of discussion is where VR technology stems from. If you really think about it, since the dawn of time, man's goal has been to be another man. And that's why historians theorize that video games were invented in ancient times so that mankind can really achieve its perfected state of manipulation of neurological studies to grow and be different.
I think video games really are just an escape for a lot of people, but with virtual reality, more people want that escape to be actual reality.
Yeah,
In a
which
different future.
it makes sense when you think about it. Is like video games come from escapism growing into real life, but where are they going to escape to? And that's virtual reality.
And then from there, virtual reality becomes real life, in which you can no longer escape it.
Well, what happens when we want to escape it?
Then you stop playing video games.
Why?
So with different advents of previous technology, even before the invention of a video game, for example, like a cinema, like going to the movie and seeing a film, that's also a form of escapism, where you're looking at the screen and you wish you were there, but it's just really just a screen. And people would think someday they would be able to do whatever they want in a screen like that without having to actually do it.
No, absolutely. And if you go from that, where do we go from that? And from cinema, they invented sports, and that's when they took the screen aspect out of it, but they replaced it with no screen. But on the other hand, was you actually had to do it, you know. And so, like, we take two things make up video games and virtual reality, and just like nature of man is just screens and doing stuff. So for sports, there's no screens, but doing stuff. And I think, like, if you think, what's the first video game ever made? Pong. And so they took sports and added it with screens. So now we have doing stuff mixed with screens, and it's beautiful.
So video games basically evolved from sports in general.
Oh, absolutely.
Just wanting to play basketball, for example, but not actually wanting to go outside.
Well,
You have a little controller here, you can play basketball.
I mean, citing a specific example, citing a specific example would be like Magic Johnson's Fast Break on the NES. It's 2-on-2 basketball on an NBA court. That's not like what an NBA superstar would be doing. That is what the average Joe Schro would be doing, and that is 2-on-2 basketball. I mean, going from that, Nintendo, who invented the first virtual reality video game hardware?
Nintendo.
And what was that?
That was the Virtual Boy.
That was the Virtual Boy.
The Virtual Boy was one of the first portable gaming hardware that you could buy without having to actually build it yourself. And what you could do is you could play tennis, some other games, but tennis was the main attraction because that's where video games came from. That's sports.
Pong. We're going back to Pong.
Yes. So what you do is you just put these goggles on, and it was like taking you to an actual tennis court, you could play with a friend on the other side.
And it was Mario.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to be friends with Mario, for example, which is one of the playable characters in Virtual Boy Tennis, you would have to buy a Virtual Boy. And that,
Or other similar hardware.
yeah, but Virtual Boy was kind of like the main one that was advertised and what people knew. So before the Virtual Boy, most of the hardware that was available to actually experience virtual reality was fairly underground, and not too many people knew about it because Virtual Boy was marketed by Nintendo as the virtual reality experience. And that's kind of why virtual reality is where it is today, is because everyone wants it. It's just being marketed as this huge conglomerate of hardware. And that's where these other companies are trying to succeed, where Nintendo failed with their virtual reality hardware, is marketing it towards a mass audience. Whereas Nintendo was marketing it, virtual reality, Virtual Boy specifically, to an audience that just wanted to be friends with Mario.
Well, yeah, I mean, don't get me started on these Nintendo fanboys and how big of losers they are. I mean, come on, man. If you just want to be friends with Mario, you're closing yourself off to all these experiences of screens and doing stuff that virtual reality brings to the table. Which leads me into the next thing I wanted to discuss, and I'm really glad that you kind of brought this up. Who are the big players in virtual reality right now?
Well, obviously, the first name that comes to everyone's mind, and ours specifically, would probably be Oculus.
Oculus.
Definitely Oculus. There's also Samsung, Sony with their PlayStation VR. I think Microsoft.
And of course, VR stands for virtual reality.
Of course, yes. And companies like Microsoft also are trying to get into the VR game. Nintendo, I feel like Nintendo is kind of over it with their failed attempt at a mass VR hardware with the Virtual Boy.
Oh, well, I thought you were talking about the Wii hardware. The Wii hardware had the screens element kind of pushed to the side, and they brought in the motion controls, which, like, aside from the two big pieces in the pie here, there's, like, motion controls, like, way kind of out there, man. And the Wii sold so many pieces of hardware, but the virtual reality aspect wasn't as important. And I feel like they feel guilty now that PlayStation, Samsung, and Microsoft with their hardware is now like eons beyond the Wii hardware. I mean, I'd feel guilty if I was them.
Yeah, I feel like that was kind of the downfall. That was where Nintendo kind of started going downhill with their sales.
And now they're not even around anymore.
No, not really.
Well, when's the last time you've heard from Nintendo?
The Wii.
When the Wii came out. So, if we're going back to Oculus, they're taking control of the screens, and it is going right into your face, man. And it is so immersive, and I would say it's very addicting, you know? I mean, I haven't experienced it personally myself, but you can tell just from looking at it and hearing about it that once you get that, you can't live without it. It is the nature of man.
Yeah, that goes back to the history of man in general. That's where the Oculus excels, is wanting to be someone else. Now with Nintendo, you had the motion controls, the Virtual Boy, you had the goggles, but what Oculus excels at is improving on those goggles and just making them, you're in another world, you're another person, and that's what people want.
Well, I think with the goggle hardware, where the really, really nitty-gritty, I'm into the nitty-gritty specs of these hardwares. And I find that in their hardware, the use of photographic imagery, you know, they take pictures of what you're going to be seeing. And I mean, a picture says 1,000 words, so you put that up to your face. Imagine just the sensory overload that you're going to be receiving from that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and Oculus. And Oculus really is kind of being overshadowed now, even with their superior technology, by companies like Sony, especially Microsoft with their VR additions to their hardware line.
Picking Microsoft for an example, with their Xbox VR hardware, Xbox One VR hardware, excuse me, they are pushing the boundaries of photographic imagery. Who makes the best cameras? Microsoft. I mean, we're using a Microsoft Windows laptop camera hardware to film this video, and it looks gorgeous. It's pristine. I mean, even the people watching this at home, you don't have to be watching this at home. With your cellular hardware technology that we've got nowadays, you could be watching this video anywhere, and it still looks just as good. And that's Microsoft. That's what Microsoft brings to the virtual reality table.
Some people might be using virtual reality to watch this video. They could be in the room with us right now.
If you're in the room with us right now watching on your hardware, please drop a comment saying, "I'm on my hardware."
And leave a like too while you're at it if you're enjoying this video. We're still just barely scraping the surface with what we can discuss with virtual reality.
Microsoft's photographic hardware isn't the only thing pushing these boundaries. I would say the thing I'm looking forward to the most in their new update, when it gets released in the coming months, is their auditory sensory improvements, especially in like the speaker hardware, the speaker wire hardware, the amplifier hardware. Like I said, I get into the nitty gritty about this stuff, man. So we're really into the hardware details.
Definitely. And what you just said about the speaker technology, companies like Oculus, Sony, Panasonic, even Nintendo back in the day, they never really experimented too much with sound. Like the goggles were just vision. You didn't have actually headphones that you could.
You can't hear through your eyes.
Definitely not, and you can't see through your ears. So that's why I think companies need to focus more on the auditory. I know there's people with disabilities that would enjoy VR, but I think even the auditory sensations is pretty groundbreaking.
But imagine a game like this for somebody that can't see, a blind person. I think there's plenty of blind people. There are tons of blind people in the world, right?
Definitely.
They want to experience VR too. What if there was a game that was walking to the bus stop, right? You can't see, you got your dog, you got your stick. It's in the sound. The sound is what captures the moment. Going from there, what I'd like to see Sony do, and I think they can really compete with Microsoft. So Sony and Microsoft, the last decade or two, have been going at each other, man. We've got the PlayStations, we got the Xboxes, we got the console wars going on.
And as you mentioned with the console wars, probably bigger than they've ever been in the gaming industry. Xbox versus the PlayStation, of course. Nintendo really needs to come back and bring back that virtual reality. I feel like if they combine the Virtual Boy with the Wii, with the motion controls and the actual virtual part of it, rather than just a screen, I think they could really be a big competitor to Microsoft. Like, they haven't released a console in a very long time. And
No, Nintendo hasn't released a console. When did the Wii come out? 2002?
2000, around there, mid-2000s, I think.
Okay, so it's been at least a decade since Nintendo's put out a console.
Yeah, and I don't even know how they're still making money, how people are still talking about it.
They're all just buying the Mario games, man. I mean, all these losers want is to be Mario's friends.
Yeah, and that's where Mario Tennis, which we were talking about at the beginning of the video, people want to be friends with Mario. I mean, he's a very
Likeable human being.
Yeah, he's one of the most iconic characters of any format of media. Like, my 90-year-old grandma would recognize Mario.
You put him on any hardware, he's going to be instantly recognizable.
Basically, yeah. Like, if they were to cross over something like Halo with Mario, I feel like that would be a smashing success.
That would be epic.
That's where Nintendo could possibly make a comeback.
Virtual reality Mario Halo crossover.
You might be seeing it soon.
I would buy that hardware in an instant.
That's what I. If one of our viewers out there would like a Mario Halo crossover, why don't you just go ahead and leave a comment saying, I want that on my hardware.
The thought of a Mario Halo crossover is making me cry.
Oh, me too, man.
I think we could talk for hours about virtual reality and its effect on hardware and where hardware is going in the future. But we feel like this is the tip of the iceberg. But I feel like that's a good chunk of what I think Jacob. Shout out to Jacob.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. What Jacob wanted when he asked us that question. Maybe we'll talk more about virtual reality hardware in the future, but I think this will wrap up today's video. Thank you for watching, and just like Jacob did, thank you again, Jacob. Please comment if you have any questions about hardware, technology, or anything tech related that you want us to answer. And don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like our videos. Tell your friends about this video because I think they'll get a lot out of it. I think one of our goals is to really educate people on hardware technology.
Yeah, and I think we really we educated each other with this topic.
Absolutely. I feel like I learned a lot from you. Good video, brother.
Yeah, it was a fun one.
Thank you.